All right, it is time for us to get started. We are in Genesis chapter 18. We are discussing the life of Abraham. And in Genesis 17, which we finished up last week, Abraham is 99 years old. He has one son that is not the son of promise. He has Ishmael. And God tells Abraham that Ishmael will become a great nation as well. Ishmael, there will be kings, princes from Ishmael, and but that's not the son of promise, not at all. The son of promise is going to be between Abraham and Sarah, not Abraham or anybody else. It happens to be Hagar with Ishmael. And chapter 17 also has a very significant thing that occurs with God and a separation, the beginning of a separation of a people. And that is a covenant. There is a covenant that is going to begin right here in Genesis chapter 17. And it is this sign of a covenant, and it is circumcision. And Abraham is to begin this, that any male in his household, whether it happens to be a son, or whether it happens to be a servant, or whether it's someone he actually purchased with money, that all of them are to be circumcised. And Abraham is obedient in all of this, and there is the beginning of this separation. Now, there won't be a complete separation between the Hebrew people and the Gentiles until we get to Mount Sinai. But there is the beginning of it. And there will be the law of Moses. The law of Moses is not yet. The law of Moses won't come about until we get hundreds of years from this point. But we come to Genesis chapter 18, and here the Lord and two angels are going to be appearing here to Abraham and to Sarah, and there is a continuation of this promise. Now, I want you to know that Abraham has already been given a promise that he's going to be the father of many nations, that he's going to be a father of a multitude, and he will be. But when he's this old, it seems like, well, when is this going to happen? All right, it's going to happen in God's own time, when he decides it's going to happen. But note that there has to be faith, and there is, with Abraham. Now, Sarah tried to solve the problem as they would see it so if there is going to be a nation and there's going to be a multitude from Abraham, it's going to have to be from somebody else, not from Sarah. It's going to have to be from somebody else. And so that's when she brings Hagar into the picture, and that was generally a bad idea. That as kind of like the surrogate, as it just doesn't work. That's not how the human family works. The family, it doesn't work like that. There are emotions that are going to be tied up in all this, and we can, though Abraham is never married to Hagar, he never is. Polygamy, let me just bring that up. Polygamy never worked ever. It is inviting problems and disaster. That it was never the design. And the design remains the same. It doesn't change. The design, we are made precisely the same material that Adam and Eve were. Same material. We are in the image of God. We are flesh and bone. We are precisely as they were, with the same emotional needs, same everything. Sin is a problem. We have the ability to choose right and wrong. We have all those things. We can reason. We can make our own decisions. All those things continue on to today. And yes, good people can make bad decisions, as Sarai does. and Abraham does. And we've already seen Abram has lied. That doesn't mean lying is good. But the Bible is presenting Abraham and Sarah with the flaws that they have, because that's people. Now, let's begin in chapter 18. Then the Lord appeared to him by the terebinth tree of Mamre, as he was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. So he lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing by him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the ground. So this is general hospitality of the day. This is the way people were at the time. There were certain expectations, or certain hopes anyway. And here is hospitality of the day. So in the form of 3 men, these aren't really men. These aren't men. We're gonna. Well, the Lord appeared to him, so we know already. And he said, this is Abraham saying, verse 3, "My Lord, if I have now found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. Please let a little water be brought and wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will bring a morsel of bread, and you may refresh your hearts, and that you may pass by, inasmuch as you have come to your servant." They said, "Do as you have said." Now he says a morsel of bread. He's going to do more than that. It's going to be more than, this is kind of like an understatement. But he's not going to do a morsel of bread. There will be bread, and there will be a calf as well. So this is not going to be a small, just, a thing to get you by. This is going to be a full meal. And verse 6, so Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah and said, "Quickly, make ready 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes." And Abraham ran to the herd, took a tender and good calf, gave it to a young man, and hastened to prepare it. And he hastened to prepare it, the young man did. So he took butter and milk and the calf, which he had prepared, and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree as they ate. So this is the hospitality of the ancient world. Hospitality here in this Near East, in the ancient world. And we have been discussing this time period, which really, let's not look down on the people in the past. And they were very good people, very clever people, people that had problems just like us, people that also had solutions just like us, people that were loved by God just like us. No difference whatsoever. And we are in a time period that predates quite a number of things. I mean, obviously we can go further back to Noah, and even further back than him to Adam and Eve. But this is this ancient time, really just a few generations after Babel. And we've got a few more generations to go, quite a number of generations to go, before we get to Israel being taken out of Egypt. But here is the customs of the day, and he's standing while they are eating. He's not joining in with them, but he's there to serve them. Then they said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" So he said, "Here in the tent." And he said, "I will certainly return to you according to the time of life. And behold, Sarah, your wife, shall have a son." Sarah was listening in the tent door, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age, and Sarah had passed the age of childbearing. And I think we would pretty much understand that. Now, in the last chapter, God tells Abraham about this son and what his name is going to be called. His name is going to be called Isaac, which means laughter. And Abraham had laughed concerning this news. Sarah is going to laugh concerning this news. Therefore, Sarah laughed within herself, saying, "After I have grown old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also?" And the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I surely bear a child since I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? So there's a good question. Is anything too hard? How did you get your life to begin with? How did that come about? And answering it biologically doesn't really work. It doesn't really help you very much because, okay, so from parentage, where did they get theirs? From parentage. Where did they get theirs? How far back we got to go? I mean, does that go infinitely all the way back? The parents and parents, parents, parents? And we can never ask the question, all right, where did it all begin? Where did that begin? Okay, if God can create life, if He can do it, if He can speak things into existence and He can create, He can form dust of the earth and form Adam, who is their father. If He can, okay, he's several generations removed. I think Abraham is about, he may be the 20th generation from Adam. I've got to look at that. But if that can be done, then we most certainly, he is 20. We can most certainly come to a conclusion that nothing is beyond God. Nothing is. He can create these worlds. He can create it to where life exists, creating life itself. All right. Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And he said, no, but you did laugh. Okay, this is, once again, people being shown for what they are. All right? She has weaknesses just like everybody else. Abraham has weaknesses. God, however, does not. God knows everything. She did laugh. She denies that she laughed. She is saying, after I have grown old, I'm going to have a child. How is this going to happen? Okay. Well, laughter or not, doubt or not, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. And nothing is too much for God. This is easy business for Him. Now, we come to this next section, verse 16. Then the men rose from there and looked to Sodom. So they're actually here for several reasons. One is they have come to visit Abraham and to announce again he's going to have a son, and it's going to be by way of Sarah. Don't worry about Hagar so much. Don't introduce anybody else into this. That it is Abraham and Sarah. But then, that's just one stop. They're going on to Sodom because there is a cry that has been going up. And we're going to discuss that in just a second. Then the men rose from there and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to send them on their way. Okay, so wherever Abraham is, wherever he is at this point, you could get to a position and actually see Sodom. Okay, that they look toward Sodom, at least in the direction of it. But I think that you probably could see those cities from a distance. And Abraham is going to send them on their way. And the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am doing? Since Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. So here is the question. Am I going to hide this from Abraham? For I have known him in order that, look at this, that he may command his children and his household after him, that they keep the way of the Lord to do righteousness and justice, that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has spoken to him. Okay, why is there this separation? Why is he looking at Abraham? Why not a Pharaoh? Why not a king over in Ur? Why not some king in, there's a magnificent king in Salem that we've already been introduced to, Melchizedek. Why not him? Abraham is the one that he separates. Abraham is the one that he is speaking to in the hopes, in the design that you have a people here and they are separated by a law and they are to be a people that are righteous. While the Gentile world goes entirely pagan and hedonistic and every other thing, granted, there were people in the Gentile world that were genuinely good. And we come across some in the biblical text of where, Melchizedek would be one. Melchizedek is not a descendant of Abraham. Matter of fact, that's a point made in the book of Hebrews. But here, there are good people outside of the descendants of Abraham, but Abraham is being separated for this purpose. All right? That here is a promise, and that there is, let's just read verse 18. Since Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. All right? For I have known him in order that he may command his children and his household after him, that they keep the way of the Lord to do righteousness and justice, that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has spoken to him. All right, so let's look at what are those promises. You've got the land promise. There is that. And the land promise is given to who or to whom? Who is given that land promise? Well, that's his descendants. And the promise is his descendants are going to be so numerous, you'll never be able to count them. It would be humanly impossible to count them. But there's another promise. There's a reason why all this separation, and he states it, and all, verse 18, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. How? How is that even possible? How is that supposed to happen? Because there's one descendant centuries from this point, many centuries from this point, that's going to be born. And that is the one promised. Originally, Genesis 3:15 called the seed of woman. And we are told this is a he. And he's going to resolve the issue with sin. He's going to resolve that. And now this is narrowing it down for us that seed of woman, well, and a he, well, that could be any man, any time, because they're going to be born of woman. Okay? That could be anybody. But now it's being narrowed down to where it's not just anybody from any nation. It's going to be a descendant of Abraham and Sarah. Okay? So here is this phenomenal, this enormous promise. And there is really no greater promise, because the promise of the Messiah brings with it greater and, well, more promises. More promises. So, verse 20, and we need to discuss this next one with a little bit of depth. And the Lord said, okay, hang on. No, we go to verse 19, sorry. Wait a minute, I'm getting lost. Verse 20, and the Lord said, because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grave, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it that has come to me, and if not, I will know. Okay, so what is being said? The Lord said. That's Jehovah. Jehovah said this. The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great because their sin is very grave. And that is going to be literal. That one is. Their sin is very grave. And what I mean by that is, they're going to lose their privilege of existing on this earth. They're going to lose their privilege. That God is going to smash those cities, and there will not be a survivor there except who God brought out, and even one of them at disobedience doesn't survive. Okay? Now, he says the outcry is great. Now, we come to verse 21 because sometimes people will begin to wonder, well, how is it that God doesn't know? I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it that has come up to me, and if not, I will know. Well, what's that about? Doesn't the God of all creation know what's happening in Sodom and Gomorrah to where he doesn't have to do such a thing? Doesn't he know that? And the answer would be, of course he does. So what's the deal with this? He is going to put it to the test. Just like God tests so many, not just Israel, but so many other nations, so many other places, so many other people. He's going to put them to the test. And this is going to be where two angelic beings are going in. And let's see what happens. How great is it? What are they going to do with this test? What are they going to do here? And actually, a miracle is going to occur, and the people there are so debased in their mind that doesn't matter. They have been halted physically, but that doesn't matter. They are so enraged. They are so filled with, well, we'll just use that word again, a debased mind, that they just cannot be turned. They can't be turned from their wickedness, not by this. Now, actually, Jesus said that if the miracles that he had done had been done in Sodom and Gomorrah, that they would have repented in sackcloth and ashes. They would have done that. But they are going to be the one subject to a miracle, but that's not enough. That was not enough for them. It would take, but Jesus was talking about all the greater things that he had done. Now, he's going to be putting them to the test, and he will know how severe is this, and is this just getting worse and worse, and that is the answer. Now, we are going to be getting into chapter 19 where Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed, but I want to begin in this discussion concerning Sodom and Gomorrah before we get there, that for years, and I mean through the years, many, going back a long time, there were doubts by the critics that where Sodom and Gomorrah was positioned from the biblical text, that you can't have large populations in that region. It's impossible because you have the Dead Sea. Dead Sea can't supply. It can supply with salt, but it can't supply you with water. You will die from that. And also, if you've looked around the region, you'll see it's a desolate place. You can't have farms. You can't have cattle. But what does Lot see in his lifetime? What did Lot see? He saw a well-watered plain. He saw a place where he could take his cattle. So something had to have changed through the centuries. Something had to have changed, and obviously it did. And what have they found? Actually, they have found two major sites there, and they have, though they cannot know, but they are labeled Sodom and Gomorrah. They can't really know which one is which. I don't know how they could know which one is which, but they have found sites that they refer to as Sodom and Gomorrah, precisely where the Bible put them. Okay? And they know several things. One, and even the secularists have had to admit, both these places were destroyed by fire. They had to admit that. And they also have had to admit that, yeah, it seems like this is really following the biblical text. Now, they'll never admit, that'd be good if they did, personally for them, never admit that, yeah, Genesis had to have been right, completely accurate on this, but they have to say, yeah, these cities were destroyed by fire. They do know that. There's ash and a big layer of it. They also, now they said, okay, so the secularists said they were attacked by an enemy that burned down the place. Yet they have found the fire in places where enemies wouldn't care about setting those places on fire, such as a cemetery outside the city. Why would they do that? Why would they bother with a cemetery? Well, you really wouldn't. But other things that are known about these sites is, the next one is no one ever came in and rehabited those places. Nobody in time. It's like, yeah, stay away from that place. And probably also with the desolation, it becomes a different place altogether, like what we see today. But no one returned. And also, in archaeology, they know, yeah, nobody so much as cleared the dead here. Where you fell and burned, that's where your bones remained until archaeologists came and found them. A tower collapsed in one of those cities, and it's obvious no one was concerned about who was underneath that tower. Bones still remain. Bones of horses, bones of people, and those bones have been burned, and they know this. Something happened, and God is telling us what it was. God, how is this coincidental? If this is coincidental, the Bible is extremely good at lucky coincidences. Let's just say that. The Bible would be extremely good at it. Why don't we just go ahead and say it's got to know, it knows too much. It just knows too much. And honestly, we give other sources, some people give other sources more credit than they ever give the Bible, even when the Bible is shown to be true every single time. Every time it can be put to the test, it passes the test. So what are you waiting on? If it keeps passing tests, what are you waiting on? It's like a professor that I had years ago, when something might be pointed out that this is what he's teaching and what the archaeology is teaching don't match up, but it looks like, instead of being an Australopithecine, that this must have been a human because everything about it looks human. He would just say, yeah, it's kind of weird, isn't it? And that's it. That's his reply. It's like, okay, yeah, go ahead. I mean, it's almost like you're living your life as a drunk, that you don't want to take anything seriously. You're just going to douse your mind with the just flippant remarks, trying to dismiss it and move on. And you're being dishonest with yourself and harming yourself when you do that. Now, we come to this, verse 22. Then the men turned away from there and went toward Sodom, but Abraham still stood before the Lord. And Abraham came near and said, would you also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Okay, now, I'm reading from the New King James. And I have these little subject headings. And in this area, the subject heading that this version put out is Abraham intercedes for Sodom. I don't believe that for a second. He's not interceding for Sodom. He's interceding for the righteous that might be in Sodom. That's what he's interceding for. specifically Lot and all those with him. Because he just can't imagine that Lot has joined in among what Sodom and Gomorrah may be doing. And he knows Lot's a good man, and those with him, pretty good. That he's interceding for them. He's not interceding for Sodom, nor is he bargaining. Abraham is not bargaining with God. There's no bargaining going on. That a bargain would be, if you will spare Sodom, I will da-da-da. All right? He's not doing that. He's interceding for his family and anybody else that happens to be among the righteous in Sodom. That's what he's doing. So he asks this question, would you also destroy the righteous with the wicked? So if you destroy Sodom, there may be some righteous there. What about them? Suppose there were 50 righteous within the city. Would you also destroy the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous that were in it? Okay? Now, there is a lesson to be learned in this. And it's a lesson that there is a power that the righteous possess. There's a power that if 50 righteous people had been in that city, God would not have destroyed it. Because that's exactly what God said. He said, far be it from you, now verse 25, far be it from you, to do such a thing as this, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked. Far be it from you, shall not the judge of the earth do right? And the Lord said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sakes. Okay? For the sake of 50 people who probably would have been despised by the rest of the city, persecuted by the rest of the city, seen as judges by the rest of the city, and looked down upon and hated. But for the sake of the righteous, God would have spared the city. That is a power that the righteous have. That's a power that's there. And, in my days, I have wondered about certain places and thinking, wow, they've got to be worse than Sodom. How bad was Sodom that this city isn't that bad yet? Because it looks to me like they are. And then, but what about the righteous that reside there? You have no idea. You have the foggiest idea how many righteous are in that city. Could there be 50? Yeah, there could be. Could there be 500? Yeah, there could be that. Could there be 5,000? Yeah, there could be that. You don't know. You don't know. And God could definitely spare a place to this day because of that. But also, now this is another subject, also for that of giving someone more time to find the truth and to obey the truth. Giving a little bit more patience, long-suffering for the gospel, for that seed to sink in to someone living there. Now, he says he'll spare the city. Verse 27, then Abraham answered and said, indeed now I am but dust and ashes, have taken it upon myself to speak to the Lord. Suppose there were 5 less than 50 righteous. Would you destroy all the city for lack of 5? So he said, if I find there 45, I will not destroy it. And he spoke to him yet again and said, suppose there should be 40 found there. So he said, I will not do it for the sake of 40. Then he said, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Suppose 30 should be found there. So he said, I will not destroy it. I will not do it if I find 30 there. And he said, indeed, now I have taken it upon myself to speak to the Lord. Suppose 20 should be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for the sake of 20. So here we see, there is a power held by the righteous. And we go a little bit further. Then he said, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. But once more, suppose 10 should be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for the sake of 10. I will not destroy it for the sake of 10. He did destroy it, which means he didn't find 10. He did destroy it. There weren't 10 people there. Now, what about the righteous? Well, we will see that in chapter 19, that they are going to be dragged out of there. They're not going to be destroyed. Now, Lot is going to have daughters who will refuse to leave. That's their decision. And they would have minutes to live, actually. And not days, it's going to be just moments. And that city is going to be destroyed. And here, God says, if there were 10, I'll leave the city alone. If there's 10, I'll leave it alone. But the fact of the matter is, there are some places where you are either, in those places, you are either a victim or you're the victimizer. You're the oppressed or you're the oppressor. It's these extremes. And now, while Lot wasn't necessarily oppressed, now in the next chapter we're going to see, yeah, this is pretty bad. It's very bad. They've suddenly focused in on Lot and they want him dead. They've suddenly focused in on him and they call him a judge. And I don't know that Lot did anything other than he didn't behave like them. But we see verse 33, so the Lord went his way as soon as he had finished speaking with Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. So Abraham is satisfied that Lot is going to be safe. One way or another, Lot's going to be safe. Because he figures, he stopped at 10, so he figures there's got to be at least 10 in the family or among Lot in Sodom, because he knows Sodom's there. He knows Lot is in Sodom. He knows that because he's already rescued Lot with Sodom and Gomorrah and the other cities having been taken captive. He's already done that in chapter 14. He knows where Lot's been. He knows where he's been, and he knows that's where Lot happens to be. Now, we begin chapter 19. We can't finish it today, but we will begin it. Now the two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom when Lot saw them. He rose to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. Now, the last time we knew concerning him, he was captured with all those others, chapter 14. Prior to that, he was pitching his tent as far as Sodom. And now we see, yeah, he's at the city gate. He's living inside. Now let's just say something for a moment. Why would Lot be here? It's going to affect his family. It's going to devastate his family. He's going to lose children. He's going to lose his wife. The two daughters who remain living they're going to be corrupted. They have been corrupted by what they saw in Sodom. Why did he go there? And I think the answer is pretty clear. Business was good there. Business was, as far as a business sense is concerned, yeah, you can make a fair amount of a good living, a fair amount of money. There is wealth there. There are markets there. It is a city. You can make more money in a city than you can traveling from little village to little village, or just staying in a little village. He is there, obviously, for the opportunity that was there. And I have heard preachers say, and I disagree with them, that Lot was justified by what he did in going there. Now, while it wasn't a sin, and I'll agree with that, it wasn't a sin, but it was a bad decision for his family and for himself. There's a lot of grief and a lot of problems and a lot of things that he saw in that place, and he knew them well enough to say what he's going to say Verse 2. And he said, Hear now, my lords, please turn into your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise early and go your way. And they said, No, but we will spend the night in the open square. But he insisted strongly. So they turned into him and entered his house. Then he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Here is that Near Eastern, this ancient hospitality. Strangers coming to the city. They are not of Sodom. And probably can tell they don't look like the men of Sodom. They don't look like them. And he offers hospitality. No, we'll stay in the city square. And it's strongly, he insists strongly of that is, literally the worst decision you could make. No, you got to get inside. You cannot stay out here. He has no idea who they are, but you cannot stay out here. He knows what the men of Sodom are capable of doing and what they're willing to do. And they are depraved. They are extremely perverted people. And they have this debased mind, as we see described in Romans chapter 1. The Romans chapter 1 isn't describing Sodom specifically. They would be part of that larger category. But with this, we see he insists that they stay with him. And so they had received hospitality from Abraham. Now they're receiving hospitality and protection by Lot. Now before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both old and young, all the people from every quarter surrounded the house. Why? Because they are wicked, and profoundly so. There's not a wise person among them. There's not someone, except for Lot and I guess a few others, but they're coming from every quarter of the city. They have surrounded the house. Why? Because two men they've never seen just came into the city. This is why you're doing this. And they called to Lot and said to him, Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them carnally. And this is the very reason he has given them protection. This is the very reason. And I can imagine the eyes of Lot of, yeah, I knew they were going to do this. I knew, maybe not surround the house, but yep, this is precisely what I knew they were going to do. They are behaving like they always behave. And one would wonder why he put up with that. That is, why he hadn't gotten out of Sodom by this point. And it would have been, I guess, just a hard decision for him to make, I suppose. I don't know. Seems like an easy one to me. But he's there, and soon this city is going to be completely destroyed. Now, and never to be rebuilt. Never to be rebuilt. And it is because of Genesis chapter 19 that we have the word sodomite. And it still holds today. The word sodomite is an English word. And it has a specific meaning. And from the definition we get of it by how they behaved, that's a horrible word. It's a horrible word. But we can see similar behavior through history, similar behavior today, this very day. It's in headlines. It's headlines all the time. But it's not just specifically in our generation. It's happened before. Obviously, Genesis chapter 19, you have an entire city caught up in this. And this is a place where you cannot go in thinking that you don't need a whole lot of protection, you don't need a whole lot of defense, this is basically an innocent and benevolent place. It's not. It's not at all. And we've got to close it out this morning, and I thank everybody for being with us. We will continue with the life of Abraham and going into the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and also talking about some of the proofs of Sodom and Gomorrah. And they're out there. And thank you, everybody.